So yeah, we've got a lot of people joining us today from all different parts of the world. So wherever you are, so good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hopefully you can all hear me well. And it's great. Some names I recognise here, so it's great to see some of you here today. Brilliant. We've still got people piling in, so I'm just going to give it another sort of 30 seconds. Shoot the breeze for a minute. Fantastic. All right. Well, look, we'll start with the pleasantries. As we know with these things, people come in all the time. So we'll get started now because we've just got the sort of preamble to do first. So welcome, first of all, to an introduction to Bitcoin. My name is Jason Dean, as you probably guessed, and I'm a crypto evangelist at Luno, amongst other things. And that's basically a flowery way of saying that I go around talking to people about cryptocurrency in general and Bitcoin in particular. And I've been involved with the industry sort of full time for 3 or 4 years now. But I did actually discover Bitcoin prior to this back in 2013, 2014, and decided not to buy it because I didn't understand it and it seemed complicated and it seemed very difficult to buy. And so I just left it alone. It was something like $80 or $100 at the time. So it probably wasn't my best move. But, you know, this is a journey, Bitcoin, because it does take a little while to get your head around it, and that's kind of why you're here today. And we're going to go through some of the questions that we all have when we first encounter this thing. So I sold my businesses a few years ago now, and I went full time into it. And one day I had to explain to my mum what I was now doing. Now you got to understand, my mum at the time was in her late 70s, didn't have the internet, didn't have a mobile phone, still doesn't actually, didn't see the point of either of those things. So trying to explain the concept of Bitcoin to her didn't go well, let's just say. I mean, neither of us came out of that conversation positively, I don't think. So I decided to write a book. I'd already written one. This is my second book. It was called How to Explain Bitcoin to Your Mum. And you can see where I'm going with this, right? So I wrote it with her in mind, trying to explain what it is in very, very simple terms, and published the book, did quite well. And I'm pleased to say that she now mostly understands Bitcoin. So it's a step forward, and it's encouragement. At least she doesn't think I'm now running a multi-billion-dollar scam from my house, which is, progress. But anyway, it started me down this road of talking to people about Bitcoin, explaining it. I'm now a top writer on Medium and Voice.com. If you use either of those platforms, look me up there. In the categories of Bitcoin, finance, investing, economics. I'm also a regular contributor to certain publications, Forbes, and Bloomberg, CNBC in particular, recently Newsweek as well. So, you know, you'll see me around from time to time talking, obviously, about Bitcoin. I'm also a miner. Don't worry about that. It's a technical term, just means I contribute to the back end of the network. And I've also been known to do a bit of podcasting from time to time. So by all means, look me up there and you can hear my lovely dulcet tones talking, unsurprisingly, about Bitcoin. Now, obviously, I use Bitcoin. I don't spend it very often and I like to keep hold of it, but that probably doesn't surprise you. And I'm quite passionate about it as well, as you can probably tell already, and hopefully by the end of this you'll be as well. So we're going to talk I think we've got everyone in now. Looks pretty well attended, so it's great to see some of those names here. Yeah, it's really good to see some of the people here. It's brilliant. So we're going to run through now and get started. We are going to do questions on this, by the way. There is going to be a full AMA Ask Me Anything at the end of this session, and we'll be using the chat function for that. So by all means, you can ask your questions as we go if you like, but I'll only really get to those at the end. Okay, so let's go through and have a look at what we're looking at here. Hang on a minute, I've got to press the button first. That would help, wouldn't it? Okay, so we're going to deal with what is a Bitcoin anyway. So we're going to do that first. I'm going to get that out of the way so we've got a basis for the rest of this presentation. Otherwise, you're just sitting there wondering what it is that we're talking about. We're going to actually spend quite a lot of this, about 15 to 20 minutes, just looking at where we've come to get to this point. And that may not make sense at first, but it will make sense at the end, because the context of how Bitcoin has come about is really important with the history of where we come from a financial point of view. Then we're going to look at how it's going to affect you, because a lot of this stuff is going to affect you either directly or indirectly. And then we're going to try and have a little guess about where we're going next. So that's our process. The whole thing takes about sort of 30, 35 minutes. from this point, and the idea is then to give us enough time for questions at the end. And of course, as you know, I'll also be giving away some free Bitcoin to everyone who's attended, courtesy of Luno today. I just want to reassure you as well that this is not a technical presentation. All right, so we're not going to do any of the really clever stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and it really is amazingly smart stuff. But I always say it's a bit like driving a car, right? So you can get in the car, you can turn the key, and the car will take from A to B, but you don't necessarily need to know how that engine works. So, and that's kind of like Bitcoin, right? We can all use it without knowing exactly how the network works. You can find out, but you don't have to know to use it. So that's what we're going to do. Let's have a look at where we get started. So first question, what even is a Bitcoin anyway? So the easiest, most straightforward answer, and we will come back and visit this in a little bit more detail. Right now, to start with, Bitcoin is money. So if you think of your pounds and your dollars and your euros, whatever currency you like, just stick for the moment Bitcoin on the end of that list. It's a little bit more to it than that, but it gives you enough to work with for now. Now, the other part of this is we need to be very clear about what money is. And economists have three very specific definitions. Because if you think about it, we could use anything as money, and we have done in history, as we'll see in due course. But it has to fall into these criteria. So it has to be a medium of exchange. So it has to be something we can pass between us, if you like, that we both consider has value in settlement of a debt, for example. It has to have a unit of accounting. Now, what that means is it's no good saying some money or some seashells or whatever it is that we're using as money. We need to have specific amounts, specific units, so we can compare value of goods and services between other goods and services. And it needs to be a store of values. It's got to hold its value. As I say, we can use anything for currency if we agree it, but we wouldn't use something like, I don't know, blancmange, because in a week's time I wouldn't want that blancmange. It's not going to hold its value, right? So it's got to in some way hold its value, either physically or digitally or whatever. It must keep that value there. Now that's enough for the moment for us to work with, but it does raise a bit of a question, because as I mentioned at the start, we've got euros, dollars, pounds, etc. So why do we need another currency? Where has it come from? Why is it now relevant that we need this other currency here? Well, the world really and money have evolved, and money's always evolved, and Bitcoin is really the next natural step. And to illustrate this, I've got to kind of take you back a little bit in a very basic sort of summary of really tens of thousands of years of history of human evolution. So I'm going to whiz through this pretty quickly, but it's an important context. This will all make sense in a minute. So if we go right back in time, right back to the beginnings of industry and what have you, where people tended to specialize in one product or service. So I've given an example here of a potato man and a cabbage man. So the potato farmer wants some cabbages, he'll go to the cabbage man, offer him a bag of potatoes and give him some cabbages. Now that all works fine if they both want the same thing. But let's say he goes to the potato man and he says, well, I don't really like cabbages, so I can't do a deal with you. So you might have to go to the carrot man, and they might say, well, go and see Mrs. Miggins down the road, because actually she does some parsnips, and if you do a deal there, and you can come back and do a deal here, and so on and so forth. So you end up this complicated arrangement. But it did work for a long period of time. I can't help thinking that the people who were probably a little bit more forceful probably did better than the ones who didn't. But that system worked. So we ended up, as I say, running this barter system for some time. But then we discovered something really cool called gold. And humans pretty much like gold from the get-go. I mean, it's really sexy, and you can do cool stuff with it. You can look cool with it. It was pretty much immediately associated with wealth because it was scarce, and it worked brilliantly. So now, instead of bartering, we could offer chunks of gold to each other because everyone wanted the gold. But you know, there are problems with this. Counterfeiting was a big problem with gold. It still is actually today. And there's, you know, is it the same grade gold, and so on and so forth. So pretty much early on, we started centralizing the control of this by, you know, a monarchy or a government would take all the gold, turn it into little round shapes, put some numbers on it, giving different denominations, and we ended up with coins. And that worked pretty well as well for quite a long time, until we had our first really major step in terms of how money works, in terms of that change. And that's something we rather romantically call flying cash. It's slightly mythical, really, the idea behind this, but it's a kind of romantic story, so I like the idea of it. So the best way to describe this is to imagine that you are a merchant arriving in 9th century China. It's a bit of a stretch, I know, but let's just go with it. And you've turned up and you've got your silks and spices, whatever it is that you're trading. You go and see your normal wholesaler and you say, right, you look at it, you agree a price, you say, right, that's 10,000 gold pieces. He said, yep, no problem. But instead of giving you 10,000 gold pieces, he gives you a bit of parchment, looks like this. And you look at it and you say, well, that's lovely, but where's my 10,000 gold pieces? And he says, no, what you've got to do is you've got to take this to a secure place in town. You hand that over and they'll give you the gold pieces. And it saves us carrying the gold pieces around. You can collect it when you're ready. You've got to understand this is 9th century China, right? So there's no central information dissemination systems, no internet, there's no newspapers per se. You don't know if you can trust the guys in the dock who would back the merchant up. It's a big leap. And this is important because it's kind of where we are now with Bitcoin. I'm going to come back to that. But there was this big leap of faith, and you can imagine there must have been some resistance to this, probably for quite some time, because you'd want to see the gold, right? Anyway, that's how this idea develops then. And you can see where this is going, because it became clear to the merchants pretty quickly that actually, if you owed someone else 10,000 gold pieces, you didn't need to go back, collect them and give it to them. You could just give them the parchment and they could collect the money from, you know, this secure location. So, of course, as you can see where this goes, the idea developed. And by the sort of 16th and 17th centuries, most countries were using gold-backed notes. So, in other words, they had a central gold currency, sometimes gold coins, but often notes, which would then could be drawn on from a central bank. And in actual fact, I'm just going to show you this picture here. This is, if you're outside England, by the way, this is a British £5 note. And you'll see that I've blown it up pretty big on the screen, but even so, you can see it's very small letters here. The words, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £5. And really these days, that's just there just really for traditional reasons. It doesn't mean anything now, but we've kept it on there anyway, and it's got progressively smaller as the years have gone by. But back up until 1931, when the fivers didn't look quite like this, obviously, you could take it into a bank, the Bank of England, and you could hand it over, and they would give you 5 gold sovereigns, real gold, because that's what backed the currency. And you could do that right up to 1931. But then we changed the system. Now, if there's any economists out there, I am really simplifying this next bit just for simplicity and speed, so don't shout at me if I'm, oversimplifying. But after that, we stopped doing that. We pegged our currency to the US dollar through something called the Bretton Woods Agreement. So our money wasn't backed by gold, but the dollar was. And then and we ran that right until 1971, when Nixon, for economic reasons we don't need to go into now, closed the gold window. So right, no more gold-backed currencies. And from that point onwards, all our currencies became what's called fiat currencies. Now that's from the Latin. It means, let it be done. It's a decree. And it basically says your currency has value because we say it has value. Or if you want to get more cynical about it, as one of my colleagues puts it, it has value because the men with guns say it has value. But the reality is our currency is no longer backed by anything. Actually, no one's currency is now backed by anything except the belief that it is. So let me give you an example here. If I was to go into, who have we got here? Let's go into, say, Karen's coffee shop, right? And I buy a latte with that £5 note, because it's a really posh latte, so it costs £5. And I give her the £5 note. Now she'll accept it, knowing that she can't do anything else with that £5 note. She can't take it to the bank, get a gold coin, can't do anything. But she knows absolutely that someone else will accept that £5 note off her. So that's how the system works. We all have this belief that it will work, and that's how all currencies now operate. No more gold backing. And of course, bringing us completely up to date, everything we do now is digital, right? So when we work for someone, we'll get our pay will arrive in our bank accounts, and we never really see that money. It's just a number on the screen. We pay our mortgage or rent or gas or electricity or whatever, and that's it. You know, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I was trying to work out the last time I went to a cash point. I know last year was a bit different, but I think we worked out it was only once. I went to a cash point in August, and that was it. So we do everything now digitally. Even things like, as you can see, I've put in the bottom of the screen there, car parking, vending machines. We all do it all digitally, either card or phone. So, you know, it's normal now to do everything in a digital way. So that shows how far we've come in these thousands of years. But we're now in a situation, probably for the first time really, where the world has moved on faster than our financial evolution has. And this has exposed some problems with our system. You've got to remember, what the thing to bear in mind is that I am actually older than our current financial system. And I know there's some other people here who are about my age or older. You know, if you're 49 or over, you are older than our current financial system. It is still very young. It's still very experimental, and we've only been running not even 5 decades yet without any form of backing. And that system is under pressure, as we'll visit in a moment. So let's go through and have a look at what's happening next. So the problems with our current system, again, this will all make a little bit more sense in a moment, because I'm going to bring it full circle in a second. First one is, because we've got no gold standard, we can print money, which right now is pretty handy, as you probably noticed, because most governments, pretty much all governments really, never save like you and I might save for a rainy day. They always spend either what they have or a little bit more usually. And that's because if you can control money and there's nothing to back it, you can just produce more. You can just say, hey, we need another 100 million quid. So, right, there's 100 million quid. Everyone believes it's got value, so don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And I mean, there are some advantages of running, you know, a non-back system or a fractional reserve system, in that we've been able to do quite a lot of cool things over the last 50 years, you know, advancing humankind, and we've been paying for these big projects and stuff because we can create money. But the problem is, this only works to a certain extent, because if you print too much, it's like anything in economics, you increase supply and demand drops and there's a price pressure. So as soon as you have money everywhere, then its value drops, its perceived value drops. And we've seen this, you probably remember Zimbabwe. Do you remember the signs of the guys holding up big chunks of money, and the signs were saying starving billionaires, because, you know, it was crazy. And you can probably see behind me, what's the other side? You can see that there's a picture frame there with some notes in it, and there's a few in there. There's a few $100 trillion notes from Zimbabwe, because it just had no value, completely overprinted. And the thing is, you think, oh well, it doesn't apply to us, you know, that was a long time ago. Well, pretty much every currency has had is failed due to inflation at some point, even going right back to Roman times, incidentally, had the same problem. But in the last 12 months, listen to this list, right? So this is Turkey, Argentina, Venezuela, Sudan, Suriname, Zambia, Brazil, Liberia, Pakistan, Iceland, the Seychelles, Uruguay. These are all countries which have where the people of those countries have seen their value either completely wiped out or significantly reduced due to the overprinting and the power of inflation. That's about 13% of the world's population, by the way, if you want to know the numbers, or almost 1 billion people. So that's a pretty terrifying situation. And if you think, oh, it's all right, it won't happen to us because, you know, that's those countries. Let me just give you some other numbers here that might concern you a little bit. because obviously we are printing money like crazy in the UK. So are the Europeans. And the US, but no one's probably doing it more than the USA, our global reserve currency, right? So get this, in June 2020 last year, the Fed printed more dollars than had been printed in the entire history of the Union, the American Union, right, over 200 years. In fact, by the end of 2020, brand new statistic, 35% of all the dollars ever printed were printed last year. And you cannot print that much really without expecting to have some impact. So we expected to see some impact going ahead. Now, the other issue is that it's centralized. Okay, so you've put all the control of money in the hands of a small group of people. We know that that will be abused because, you know, that's human nature for you. And the other thing is the banks really act as agents for this. So they control the game, right? So if you set up a business and they don't like you, they're not going to lend to you. If they really don't like you, then they're not even going to give you facilities, and there's not much you can do about it because they own the game. And this is why at the moment we've got something like 1.7 billion people are unbanked in the world, which is mostly in third world countries, but there are even countries like Germany has about 1 million unbanked at the moment for various different reasons. And the other thing is, the other problem with centralized transactions is the fact that, of course, you have to use them to transfer money. So if I was going to transfer money to maybe Charlie over there, I would say I'd have to go through a bank, or I'd have to go through PayPal or Ping It or Transfer. There's lots of services I can use, but I have to go through someone else's service to make that transaction. And if it's a large amount of money, they might say, where'd you get that from? Or we don't think we want to approve that. Or there could be any reason why it could be stopped. You don't have full control. You just have the illusion that you have control. It's a problem, but you know, it works on the whole. The next thing is, and the last thing in this category is trust. And as I've kind of alluded to before, you know, humans are rubbish with money. We shouldn't be allowed it. We should not be allowed it because we cannot be trusted with it, particularly if it's in the hands of a small group of people. Throughout the entire history of humans, we've abused it, and we will carry on abusing it. That's just how it works. I'll give you a great example of this, actually. Have a look at this. This is a list of fines paid by banks up to 2018. Actually, I meant to update this, and I forgot this is only up to 2018. In billions for offences to do with rate fixing and money laundering, right? So the Bank of America, for example, paid $76.1 billion in fines for that rate. And we know they're doing it. They know that we know that they're doing it. But the reality is they probably made 300 billion from doing it. They only paid 76 billion in fines. That's how it goes. We're just kind of used to it. We use it. That's how the system works. So, you know, it's not ideal, but that's how it unfolds. So that's some of the problems that we've got. You know, we live in this totally digital world, and we don't have really a completely digital system. You think now how different the world is now to how it was in 1971 when we started our fiat system. It doesn't really add up. So things have moved on. So money really should be something that we have control of, and it should be as easy for me to send money to Keith or John, whoever is here, like sending a WhatsApp message. That's what it should be like, but it isn't. But Bitcoin came along and kind of changed how these things could work. So let's have a look at actually what it is. Now you've got all the context. Now you understand why someone was looking at an alternative, because our system works, but it is flawed. So someone kind of thought about it and said, right, what can we come up with that is a bit better? So it was created in 2009. It's actually designed, most of the work was done in 2008. And of course, those of you who maybe follow financial stories probably remember that date as the credit crunch. And it was designed out of that credit crunch really as an alternative to our existing system. And it's completely digital. It was programmed by a person or group of people called Satoshi Nakamoto, which was a pseudonym. So we know that for sure. They designed it, they set it up, they got it running as a completely open source project that anyone could get involved with. They gave it to the community and disappeared, never to be heard of again. And to this day, we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is or was. We have no idea. No one's literally ever heard from them. And whilst that seemed a bit odd at first, the reason I actually now think it might have been a deliberate move, because there is no way Bitcoin can now be associated with any single individual or person, because it's now a completely community driven open source project globally that anyone at any time can contribute to. And I know that sounds a bit crazy, but just go with me on this, because it does become a bit clearer as we go through it. The idea is this is a universal currency. Now, it can be used by anyone, anywhere, at any time, right? So you and I can transact without having any other person involved with our transaction. All we need, both of us, is a smart. So if Steve, for example, and I were going to convert some, send some money backwards and forwards to each other, we would, all we'd need is a smartphone. It's as simple as that. And we would be able to do that transaction directly through using the Bitcoin network. And what that means is it levels the playing field. So that means people in Puerto Rico can transact and trade with people in Africa, for example. It's borderless, absolutely borderless. The borders now mean nothing. The different currencies mean nothing, because we're all using this single currency, which is globally accepted. Now, even better, that transaction can't be stopped. Okay, it can't be interfered with anyone. It can't be reversed except by the two people involved with the transaction. There is no central body, and this is essential, because what that means is there's no one individual, there's no country, there's no company, there's no organization anywhere that can control or affect how this system runs, which has never happened before in human history. So this, you can see how groundbreaking. You remember I referred back to the whole flying cash thing, this leap of understanding is pretty major when you look at it in that context. So we've never had that before. It only exists digitally. So we do, I mean, I've got one of these here, these little Bitcoins, which are kind of fun, but they're not real. You see photos of these around, but they're really for people like me to put on articles. There is no digital, there's no physical version of any Bitcoin. It only exists digitally. But as we've already learned, it's not really a problem for us, because we do everything digitally these days anyway. It's incorruptible by humans because it sits entirely outside of our control. And that, as we've already identified, is an extremely important point. It is also, and this is a bit of a weird word here, a disinflationary store of value. Right, we know what inflationary is, we know what deflationary is. Disinflationary is a kind of third variant of this. Don't worry about it too much, but the closest equivalent, I suppose, is gold. Right, so we know that gold has a fixed amount. We don't know exactly what it is, but we know there's a certain amount of inflation. New gold comes to the market every year, and it runs at around the same. It's usually about 2%, and that runs consistently every year. But it will, eventually get to a point where that is limited theoretically. With Bitcoin, there is a fixed supply of 21 million coins, and that's it. There is no more. So what that means is, if you own a Bitcoin, you're only one of 21 million that ever will exist. It cannot create anymore. It's written in the code at the absolute base level. You can't change it. So that means, I'm trying to make a comparison really. Imagine you had $1. If you got a dollar bill in your hand or a pound note, and more money's been produced, well, that dollar is one of 24 trillion, 25 trillion, 26 trillion. You can see the value of that going down. Whereas your Bitcoin is one of 21 million. That's it. Of course, you can buy elements, parts of Bitcoin as well. You can buy up to 100 millionth actually of a Bitcoin. Okay, so it's very technical. We don't need to go into any of the technical stuff whatsoever. But there's lots of information on this. I've just kind of run through the key points of this. But it's a digital, non-sovereign, peer-to-peer currency. It's probably the best way of summarizing all of that. However, it's not a panacea. There are some problems with Bitcoin. The first one is acceptability, because at the end of the day, it's quite hard to spend your Bitcoin in its native form. If you go to a local coffee shop, you'll see a price in pounds and pence if you're in the UK, and you won't see it in price per Bitcoin, which is 0.0000683 Bitcoin, for example. By the way, we call those Satoshi, the parts of a Bitcoin. So like pounds and pence and dollars and cents, you have Bitcoin and Satoshi. However, this is becoming less of a problem because there's some big companies got involved recently, and you've probably read about some of this. I'm going to touch on this later. It's becoming less and less important to be able to spend your Bitcoin in its native sense. That's all I'm going to say about that at the moment. We'll come back to it in a sec. The next issue is something I call the cold coffee problem. So again, going back to Karen's coffee shop, bought my coffee with my Bitcoin. I've got to wait about an hour for it to confirm, which is not ideal for if you're buying a coffee. So it'll be cold by the time I take it away. Now, there are solutions being worked on with this, something called the Lightning Network and various other solutions. But again, there are some who argue, including myself actually, this is becoming less relevant as time goes on. The next thing, I've mentioned it before, flying cash syndrome, right? It is so different to what we are used to that it really does take a few goes to get your head around this. It's like me seeing Bitcoin 2013, 14. I mean, I really tried to understand it, but I just couldn't. And, you know, it was very different then. It was very technical driven. On-ramps and off-ramps didn't exist. And it was a bit Wild West, to be honest with you. So, you know, it wasn't an easy thing to get involved with, but I kept sort of poking it with a stick, and it took me a while to really get it. So we are in that situation now. So it takes a few goes. Don't worry about that. It's completely normal. It's volatile. You've probably noticed that Bitcoin price in dollar terms has been going up and down like crazy. I mean, last March it was what, $3,500. We just hit $42,000 a week or so ago. It's now hovering around, I don't know what it was when we went live, about 33,000, I think, something like that. So you got to be prepared. If you're getting some Bitcoin, you're going to be up and down a little bit for a while. Is it legal or illegal? Well, most countries, actually, the vast majority, Bitcoin is legal. There's only about 5 or 6, I think, which have specifically stated it's not legal. And some of the ones that who said it's legal have said, you know, it's legal, but you can't buy stuff with it, or you can't send it to other people, whatever. In the UK, actually, it's legal completely. And they're actually, if you go to the HMRC website, there's actually very specific guidelines on taxation, how you treat it for tax and all that kind of stuff, and that goes actually right back to 2015. So, you know, they really did get on this pretty quick, I have to say, before I did actually. So you know, real credit to them. Now, those are kind of the limitations of Bitcoin as a whole. Most of those are being worked on, and I've kind of switched tone now a little bit to give you a little bit more context of where we are. So we know what our financial system is. We know what some of the pressures are. We know that Bitcoin was created as a way to kind of counter some of that. It was very experimental when it first started 12 years ago, but it's really sort of become more mainstream now. And as I mentioned about the price, that price has changed very significantly, particularly in the last few months. So the question we're probably all asking ourselves is, what the hell happened? Why is this suddenly become, you know, the thing to buy, and why are all these people getting involved, and so on and so forth? Well, it's a great question. So you've seen, I've already alluded to most of this, the unlimited quantitative easing, that's money printing. We're doing that like crazy at the moment. So we're going to see devaluation, right? We know that's going to happen. Even the Fed have acknowledged it's going to happen. But they've just said, look, we'll deal with that problem when we get there. Right now, we'll just solve this COVID thing, and then we'll deal with it later. And you probably saw that Biden's just proposing what's another $2 trillion or something. I mean, it's crazy stuff. We've also got the issue of interest rates, because interest rates at the moment are very low, and we can't really go any lower. But you may know, of course, that the Bank of England wrote to all the commercial banks in October last year and said, right, just, you know, spitballing here, but if we were to make negative interest rates, would your systems be able to cope with that? And you should prepare for that now. And it seems crazy that we'd ever look at this, but don't forget, this has already happened in Japan, it's already happened in Denmark, it's already happened in Switzerland. UBS last week just announced they are increasing their interest rate, not to pay you, for you to pay them for money on deposit with them. So if you've got more than 210,000 quid, you now have to pay UBS 0.75% per annum to look after that money for you. At the same time, it's devaluing. So you can see why people with a lot of money have started thinking, well, look, where am I going to put my money? Because I don't want to keep it in cash. got to get it out of cash. So let's have a look at where we're going to put it. Bonds. There aren't any bonds that have any real yields in real terms. Gold is fine, but it's actually quite hard to buy and hold. And there's other issues with gold as well, but it's proven. It's thousands of years old, so it can work. Property, although again, you might not be thinking about necessarily commercial property or office property maybe, because things have changed a little bit. Equities. Don't talk to me about equities. They're massively overvalued, in my opinion. It's just my view, because economic stimulus is being confused with economic growth. So there's not many options available. So what's been happening is, since really about August last year, September, a lot of big players have been moving into Bitcoin. Now I've just this is a slide we could talk about for an hour. We don't have time. We've got like a minute. So I've just put a bunch of companies up there that you can see. MicroStrategy really started this whole thing off. A big publicly listed company, now put $1.2 billion worth of their treasury reserves into Bitcoin, now worth about 2 billion-ish, something like that. Square, Jack Dorsey's crew, they bought 50 million. PayPal have announced that you can now buy and sell and hold Bitcoin and spend it through their platform. It's already available in the States. It'll be available in the UK, I think, in the next quarter is what they're saying. You can spend your Bitcoin on MasterCard and Visa networks with a debit card linked to your Bitcoin wallet. So, of course, that's a big change from where they came from. A couple of months ago now, MassMutual, like one of the most conservative companies really on the planet, big insurance conglomerate, they've got a lot of assets under management, bought $100 million worth of Bitcoin. And there's hundreds of companies now. I mean, I can't go through the list. Leonardo's there, by the way, because he's my representation of high net worth individuals. We've had a lot of big names move some of their cash into Bitcoin. Obviously, Michael Saylor, who's the owner of MicroStrategy, he's put a lot of his personal money as well, 175 million. People like Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, bought a lot. Paul Tudor's, Mike Novogratz, big influential fund managers, Stanley Druckenmiller, Raoul Paul, Ricardo Salinas Pliego, Mexico's second richest man. He's put 10% of his net worth into Bitcoin. He's rumored to be worth about $11 billion. So there's big money going into this. And of course, there's very limited supply, as we already know. So we have seen this change in demand. So this is going to affect us all. There's no question about it, either directly or indirectly. And it's great that you're here now. I know it feels like you're late to the party, but you're not actually. You're quite early to the party because adoption is still reasonably low. But things are moving, and they're moving quickly. And it's great that you're here today. So let me just click on here again. I'm now going to introduce you to Luno, because we've seen what the big picture is, we've seen what Bitcoin is, and we've seen why the price has changed and what's happening right now that's making everything happen. So we're going to try and bring it back to sort of us, I suppose, now as individuals, because at the moment this has all been kind of conceptual and kind of macro level discussion. So how do we make this real? How does it become relevant to us? And that is really through the Luno app. And in your, most of you should have got an email before this started today, just saying, look, for ease, download the app first, because and it will become clear why in a moment. But this app, a free app you can download from your store, so it's Apple or Android. You can do it online as well, but it's easier really online on the device. And this really is your gateway. This is the easiest way to think about this. So just imagine you're going abroad. You have to imagine at the moment, you can't actually go abroad, but just imagine we were going over to France for the weekend or something, and we wanted some euros. We would go to the Bureau de Change and we would change our pounds into euros. And when we come back, we change our euros back into pounds. But actually what you're doing is you're selling your pound sterling and buying euros. We think of it as exchanging, but actually that's what we're doing. And then we do the reverse when we get back. And what Luno basically allows you to do is move between the old or existing financial system and this new digital finance system. So it's like this gateway, and it's a lovely, seamless, easy to use gateway between the two. So you can sell your pounds and buy Bitcoin. And if you want to, you can sell your Bitcoin and buy pounds. So you can move backwards and forwards between those two financial worlds really with great ease. It also has a number of other things in it because it's one of the few wallets that has a built-in learning portal. So when you go to it, you can actually open it up and there's a whole section there on learning. So little videos, how to do this, how to buy Bitcoin, how to send Bitcoin. And then there's another section which has got all the latest news being fed to your app. So it's brilliant that you can have it in your hand all the time. And it's something that Luno do particularly well. And it's this great product if you're early or you're sort of new, I should say, to the whole Bitcoin world. So hopefully some of you have got this app installed already, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the process of giving you sort of £10 worth of Bitcoin that you can use. Now, it should be clear, this is a gift, right? Because I'm always asked the question, you know, what do we have to buy? What do you have to subscribe to? Whatever. There's no requirement for purchase. There is no subscription fee for the app. It's completely free. Just download it, install it. And the reason that we do it is quite straightforward, because remember, as I said, none of us grew up with Bitcoin. So we're all going through the same thing you guys are going through at the moment. We've all got to learn it. I mean, there's a generation now who's grown up with the internet, just don't know anything different, right? But some of us are getting old enough. We had to learn the internet sort of as it developed, and it's kind of the same now for Bitcoin. But the advantage of this is that we know what all the usual questions and issues are. And as I mentioned earlier, for me, it was the fact that I couldn't be sure that I wasn't going to lose my money, and I didn't know how to do it. And if I did get it, would I lose it? Would I accidentally do something stupid and lose my Bitcoin? So what Luno says, all right, well, look, have the app, will give you £10 completely free, and you can do whatever you like. You can basically get your confidence in using this new financial system on our dime. That's how this works. So there's no condition. Do whatever you like. If you don't want it, you can give it to charity, do whatever you like with it. But it is a gift from Luno to yourself. So let me explain how this works. If you have downloaded this already, it will be much easier. So let me, hang on, I've got to click on here again. Okay. I have just put, before I put this code on the screen, explain it, there is one thing you must do first. So before you try and use this code, you must verify. Now, I'll stress again, you must do this. And the reason you must do this is because if you don't and you try and enter the code, it won't let you use the code. But even worse, you won't be able to apply it again later on because it will think you've already used the code. Now, verification is something that you have to do with any banking app. It's not Luno's requirements. It is basically a global requirement, this one pretty much. And it's to do with anti-money laundering, AML and KYC, know your customer. And the way that you do it, just hopefully I've clicked on here, as you can see, there's my screen there at the top. You click on the, I've got too many things on my window here. So you click on profile. So when you download your app, you've got profile at the bottom right. And then you click on that, you've got verification settings, I think it is, then verification. Now, if your app says anything other than level 2 verified, you need to do the verification first before you claim this £10. The way that you do that, it'll take you through the process. It's nice and easy. And it's a mugshot and a passport usually, and the verification is normally done instantly. So that's I've got a few questions coming through, and I'll come to those in a second. So it's normally done instantly, 99% of the time that is. Occasionally it needs to be manually done, and that can take up to 24, even 48 hours, because as you can imagine, there's a huge demand for it right now. So I've waffled on deliberately because I don't want you to put this in and not get the £10. So I'm now going to give you the code, and the way that you do that is you go to rewards at the bottom of the screen and then enter a code. And if someone who has downloaded this can just let me know this code is working, that would be great. So the code, hang on a minute, click on here again, that you're going to enter now is PDUK 260121. I'll say that again, PDUK 260121, Papa Delta Uniform, I think it is, Kilo 260121. If someone has got their Luno account already downloaded, if you could just let me know in the chat whether that code is working. It should be fully live. It is going to stay live at least for another week, So if you haven't done your verification, do not panic. You can keep that, make a note of that code, and you will be able to use it when the verification is complete. Now, as you probably saw when you signed up for this, you have to be over 18, you have to have ID, and you have to be resident in the UK. So I know there are people here from the US. There's a couple of guys I can see from New York. I'm sorry guys, you can't take advantage of this offer at the moment, but I hope you found the information useful. Right, I've had a few people come through saying it's worked. Yep, that's great. Yeah, there's quite a few coming through now, so it does look like that's worked okay. So that's fantastic. Now, before we go, because we're going to do some questions in a second, there's a couple of other ways that you can earn some money through Luno, and I'm just going to explain those to you quickly now as well. So the first thing I should mention is the Luno savings account. This is very cool. It's pretty new, but also built into your app is a savings account. So a bit like you have your bank account and your savings account, it's not worth saving anything because you can get like 0.2% if you're lucky. It doesn't even cover the inflation, but now where there's like a Bitcoin version. So your main account where your Bitcoin goes, your £10 that's gone in is your kind of your current account, if you like, think of it. If you scroll down where it says add a wallet, you'll see investment, add investment wallet, I think it's called. Click on that and you have to go through agree, and then you say, right, you can move your Bitcoin over and you can claim, and it'll automatically add interest to it. And that's 4% a year, it's compounded monthly, calculated daily. If nothing else with your £10, put it in the savings account and just let it sit there, and you'll get 4% on it, which is, as I say, 4% more than you'll get in the bank right now. So that's very cool, built into the app. And again, you can take it in and out instantly. The next thing you can do is this little presentation that I've done today is what we call an introduction to Bitcoin webinar. We've done hundreds of these over the last year or so. This is a public one, so that's why we've got a lot of people here from all around the world today. But we also do like a private version, and we've done quite a lot of these as well. And that can be for a university, for an organization, a company, anything you like really. If you put us in touch with someone to help us kind of spread the adoption and word of Bitcoin, I suppose, we will give you £50 in Bitcoin in your Luno wallet. Plus, of course, everyone who attends gets £10 as well. And it's a pretty good deal. So basically, you just put us in touch. If it happens, we'll give you the £50. As I say, we've done them anywhere from about 20, I think, is the smallest, right up to, I think the biggest one I did was 780 people, which is in 4 different countries, which was great, just one company. And that's, yes, end of year meetings or end of month, end of quarter, team meetings, lunch and learn. These are all the sort of things. You can get in touch. You probably notice I've left my contact details on the right hand side of the screen there. If it is to do with the booking the events, you can use the luno.com/company-webinars link, put the information in there, mention that you were here today, and we'll get that set up, and you can do that. Okay, I will go through the chat in a minute. I can see we've got some few things coming up on the chat. There is one more thing I'm going to say just before we move to Q&A. I'm only about 3 minutes behind, so that's not bad for me. There is one other way that you can earn some money through Luno, and this may not be relevant to you at the moment, and this is one you do need to apply for. You need to apply through the email address that's on the right hand side there, which is pioneers@luno.com. And basically, it's a new program we're running at the moment. It's pretty cool actually, and it's very, very simple. Honestly, it's this easy, right? We basically give you a budget of up to £500 worth of Bitcoin to give away to your friends and family. That's it. For every £10 you give them, you'll get £10 in cash or Bitcoin. It's as simple as that. However, the only condition is you do need to know a bit about Bitcoin, obviously. You need to be in the UK, over 18, etc., etc. And there is a short interview process that we do with this one via Zoom. If you want to get involved with this program, we're happy to hear from you. I know that people who attend this event aren't always just beginners. There are people who are looking for different angles to explain things. So you're very welcome to apply. Drop me a line at that pioneers@luno.com.